That's the power of the canvas of life, people.
Oh my gosh, no way. How are you, Rahi?
Yeah, mate. I'm good. I'm good. Just yeah. Hay fever's killing me. What about you, bro?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Actually, you know what? One thing I'm excited about and very happy about is it's another episode with a guest. This time with Krishna. Krishna, introduce yourself.
Hey Rahi, hey Jace. Thanks for having me on. My name's Krishna Bola and I'm working business operations in a company up in North London. So I've been working there for 5 years, but I run my own business as well, based in Southampton. So I commute a lot, or used to commute a lot prior to COVID-19. And yeah, I live in Southampton. I've grown up in Southampton. I've stuck to my roots in Southampton. So I've got some close loyalties to the area. And yeah, really glad to be on to have a chat with you guys.
Sweet. We're glad to have you on board, and that's exactly the point. So you're here, Krishna, to talk about entrepreneurship and what it's like working during COVID and how one may possibly adapt during these times. So on the note of Southampton, how would you say, Krishna, as Southampton has been affected by or has changed since the times of COVID?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to be out on the streets and see hardly anyone around. It's probably the same as in London as well and the rest of the UK, but having spoken to a lot of my friends in London, it seems like London's taken the coronavirus a lot more seriously than I think a lot of, especially young people around Southampton are. I've seen, huge groups of kids kicking a ball around and playing full football matches when they shouldn't really be doing that. Whereas in London, that's just definitely not the case. People are really, really sticking to the rules and the guidelines.
Another thing is, Krishna, like you're someone who knows how to take initiative and start up something for yourself, for your own needs, or for actually the needs of others. You've had the experience of launching your own business. Like, could you talk about a bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm the commercial director of a company called Gains on the Go. So I built this business with myself and 3 other of my colleagues as directors of the business, which is a health and meal preparation company. So we're based in Southampton, we serve Southampton, and what we aim to do is provide the world with a healthy alternative to the fast food culture. So essentially, we want to provide really healthy meal preparation, but tastes really well and really good, and makes you feel good inside, makes you feel good outside as well. I think the special thing about us is we want to promote a culture beyond just eating healthily and extend that out to ensuring that people have a culture of being healthy in terms of their well-being overall. The experience of, I guess, growing a business has been challenging. It's been really fun. It's had many ups and downs, and I think being able to build a business after being in one which has seen huge growth over the years has helped me understand what we need to do in order to continue growth and to continue building on the foundations that we've built so far.
Did you build this business working from home, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Oh, okay.
Gains on the Go started back in 2017. We decided to sit down together and we wanted to build a business. We wasn't sure what we wanted to do, but we all decided to look at something that challenges us, something that we found quite frustrating, and eating healthily was one of those things. We started to look at the market. We did some primary research looking on places like Just Eat and Deliveroo, and we found quite quickly that the vast majority of the meal offerings on places like that are unhealthy.
Very unhealthy. And if you can get anything healthy, it's always expensive.
Exactly. So we wanted to be able to offer meals that were quick to heat up and quick to consume at an affordable rate.
Go ahead and plug it. How would you do that?
So
I got you.
I love that. So you can find us at www.gainsonthego.co.uk, and you can find us on Instagram at gainsonthego.
Cool. So like, there is a reason why I asked you about your business, and like, so actually, next thing was like, did you build all of this whilst working for your current company?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a lot of challenges really with being able to work flexibly around growing your own business. So we had certain instances where we had orders coming through and we had to work from 11 in night till 2 a.m. in the morning and then get back to work. And at that point, sometimes I would have to travel up to London. So my train was leaving at 7 a.m. I'd be in by 9 and then back home by 8 and start the grind again.
Okay, so like hard worker, bro. Like as of course I already know of you. Like, so when you was working with your role with the current company that you're working with, are there like any specific things where you can be like, oh, I can just do this working at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So even prior to COVID, as my company is a tech company, we're very much for working from home. We were implementing work from home practices before COVID came about. So as I was and currently still live in Southampton, I was working from home 2 or 3 days a week. Of course, now it's a daily thing, but being able to have that flexibility, especially when you knew that you had particular meetings you had to attend to, you could work around that and balance your own business with work.
Yeah, because like what I was gonna say is like if there's anything that I've noticed like is the fact that with a lot of roles and jobs these days, you can do a lot of it from working from home. And if there's anything that this whole COVID experience has taught, maybe a lot of businesses is that maybe they don't need to force the usual ethos of having to go to everyone having to go to one building and working from there. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you think there's been a change in nature of work, which has like increased pressure, not pressure, but maybe a changed ideology that companies don't need to force people to go into a company building anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading some recent stats on the trends of working from home, and there has been a general trend that's gradually rising in terms of working from home over the last 5 years. But given the COVID situation, there was a report from Statista that said that 50% of employers have asked their employees to work from home during this period of time. So it shows that it can be done, even though there's lots of challenges. And I've spoken with certain clients, such as insurance companies, who have found it really difficult to make that transition into working remotely. But now that we've been almost forced into this situation, it's the case that employers will start to realize that it is actually possible and people can be more productive working from home. And there is a right for employers to ask and request for flexible working, which includes being able to work from home. And the employer has to give a reasonable justification and take reasonable consideration of that request. And given that lots of people have proven they can work from home, I think we'll start to see a bigger trend in people deciding to work from home, because I think it's very good for your well-being in terms of getting a work and life balance.
I was going to say, so do you think that because of what's happened now, the kind of employees that companies employ will change? Because now it's kind of like everyone can work from home, or not. If a lot of people can work from home, you don't necessarily have to employ people who live in nearby areas. You could employ someone who lives on the other side of the country, or maybe even in a foreign country.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my current role, we do employ a lot of people remotely, and they're mainly back-end developers, and that's demonstrated how it is possible to employ people and employ talent from across the world. And I think there's big news stories with the likes of Facebook telling their employees they can work from home for the rest of the year. That demonstrates it helps to demonstrate that it is possible, and it should be considered and can be considered as a perk for employees to say they want to demand flexible working and being able to work from home from their employer.
Do you think it might change kind of like the team culture? Because yes, it's fair enough that people can work from home, but there's always something about going into work and working with people. Whereas some people might get kind of like maybe they might get lonely working from home.
Absolutely, it's definitely a big challenge, and I think one of the key benefits of working in a startup or a scale up is the culture, and retaining that culture is really important to the employer. They want to seem cool, and in the company that I currently work with, we have a whole load of perks with regards to we've got an in-house chef who we get freshly made good meals provided to us every day. We are able to play table tennis. We have some really fun and exciting social events, which are going to become less common with people who work from home. So it's definitely a challenge.
So this is a question for everyone, including those listening. Would you rather prefer to work at home, or would you prefer to work, in a company building with people?
So from my perspective, because I'm used to working from home and because my commute on a day-to-day basis, if I do go in, costs me 4 hours. I would prefer a hybrid between the two. I'd much prefer to go into the office a couple of days a week and then work from home from the rest of the time.
Personally, I'm not sure, actually, because only because, I mean, to be fair, what I do is quite difficult to work from home because if I'm in a lab, then I can't make a lab in my house, so I have to go into the lab. However, I think there's sometimes when you're not necessarily doing practicals where you may be working on a paper, writing something where you don't need to go in, and days like that. So I think it's a good idea to have flexible working where employees don't necessarily have to come into work, and there's that kind of like maybe going to the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and then the other rest of the week work from home or work wherever you want to work for. And I think that gives people the flexibility to do as they please. But I understand that because I read that a company basically found that working from home was very successful during COVID. That they're basically gonna when their lease is over, they're not gonna rent anymore, and what they're gonna do instead is every now and then they're gonna basically have a conference in a hotel. So they're gonna rent a hotel, like a room in a hotel, and basically have like maybe like their staff meetings every like maybe once every 2 weeks or once a month, which would then save them a huge amount of money from paying rent, which makes sense, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's 2 points that I'd kind of respond to that. I think there's different types of work, and even in a single role, you have deep learning where you'd much prefer being alone and being able to maybe listen to music and just spend the time to do some thinking versus other instances where you might be working on something which does need some cross collaboration between individuals. And I do think that is a lot easier done when being around the people. And the second point that I wanted to make was around how you're completely right that there is an opportunity for savings to be made by employers and also an opportunity for society where if people are working from home more, offices are going to be needed less. And therefore, as a result of that, we'll have an opportunity to convert these offices into residential homes.
Do you know, I was going to say, like, for me, personally, I wish in an ideal world you can pick and choose when you want to work from home and when you want to work. Because, like, sometimes it's all down to your mood. Like, sometimes you're just like, oh, I feel very social. I want to go in. And, sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to see people. I'd rather work at home today. So that would be my ideal world. And there are actually some places that let you do that. Do you know what I mean? So a bit of flexibility will be the best way around it, in my opinion. But obviously, it depends on the situation, the workplace, and So yeah.
That's what personally I think it should be like. I think obviously not every job can do that, but maybe if you're working in like kind of like IT or maybe you're working in the office, so that kind of role, maybe you don't necessarily have to go in every day. And I think I think when people are when you leave people to their own devices, like if you employ someone, you're basically trusting that they can do the job. You don't need to micromanage them. So if they want to come into the office today, I guess they can. If they don't want to come in today, they don't. Do you know what I mean? If where some people, I think some employers would demand that their employees come in all the time just so they can see that they're doing their work. But I think that's not just because someone's in the office doesn't necessarily mean that they're being productive. And I think that if you leave people, like at the end of the day, you're employing adults, and if people do feel free to basically run their life as they want to, and as far as they give you the results that you require, how they get that like maybe someone might not even want to work the 9 to 5, maybe they might want to work in the evenings and have the day, but as far as they're getting the job done, it shouldn't matter when and what and how they get it done. And I think that this situation happening might mean that a lot of employers will realize that, you know what, it's okay, like everyone can do, just as far as you get the results done, do whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. And do you know what? I forgot what I was going to say. What were we talking about again?
Oh, working from home.
Working from home. Nah, I fully forgot, to be honest with you. I can't remember anymore. All right, someone else is going to have to take it. I really had a good one. Do you know what I mean?
Actually, I'm going to take it all the way back to the beginning. We were talking about gains on the go. So basically, you were talking about how you and your colleagues sat down and thought of a business. How did you know at that point that they could be good business partners? Because I have a lot of friends that I definitely would not go into business with. So how do you like? Whereas maybe there's some people that I may not necessarily know that well, which where I think that they could actually make good business partners. So how did you know that your colleagues would make good business partners?
Yeah, I think it's really a challenge, and you can't pick and choose personality traits out of individuals because they come as a package. But I think it's more down to ensuring that the person has the motivation and the enthusiasm for that particular business idea. And you're able to help coach, help learn, and develop love for any flaws which are within someone. And so it's just making sure that they initially have that motivation. But I completely agree. I think there are certain friends that I have as well who I love as individuals and as friends, but just wouldn't be able to work with them on a day-to-day basis in business.
So what with Gains on the Go, what is the plan for the future?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of big plans really. We want to go national. We know that the market is relatively crowded, and the only way for us to become a success in the wider scheme of things is starting to battle with these bigger players who will serve the national market. So that's within the plans. We also have a new potential partner joining us who's a chef who's specialized in high end food. So he'll hopefully in the next few months be coming on board with us to help elevate our product offering and start to reach a more mature market. So we've got lots of good plans. We want to run more events, which we did a lot of at the back of 2019. Obviously, we'll need to start adapting to understanding what we need to change with social distances measures and any other restrictions that might be placed on us. So we're in a process of planning and understanding what we need to do in order to help serve those events without putting any risk at any attendees.
Now, here's the important question, Krishna, and this is why I'm here, because I bring out all the important questions. How has the recent pandemic situation affected your business?
So to be honest, it's actually been positive for us because the it's actually been positive for us because people are starting to get really bored of unhealthy foods and ordering things online. And so yeah, we've created a captive audience who want to taste healthy meals but can't necessarily get that through using the usual apps like Deliveroo and Just Eat.
Has this situation led you to adapt or given you a new source of ideas about running a business?
Yeah, so I think we were in a good position to start with Gains on the Go, given that we were meal delivery and we never had any real changes to the way that our business model worked. So we continued to operate as we do. The only challenge was and still is around our partnerships with personal trainers and people in the industry who help support Gains on the Go and how we help continue to produce marketing content and promote a healthy lifestyle with these people supporting us where we can't necessarily hold a big event which we used to do previous to COVID coming in place.
So you've clearly gained a lot of experiences just from this whole situation alone. And talking about experiences, could you tell us about how you got to this point? Like, for example, just growing up as a child, down to uni, and what have been the most important factors into what you're doing now, being an entrepreneur?
I mean, in terms of my upbringing as a child, I was never brought up with wealth around me, or you know, I grew up in a low income background, and my name probably gives away the fact that I'm from a ethnic minority. So I was born in the UK. My dad's from Mauritius. My mum was born in the UK, but her mother and father are from India. So I faced a childhood of, I would say, relative poverty. I know there are people out there, and at the time, and even now, that were a lot worse off than me. But I think what helped me to elevate and move to where I am today is the fact that I've had a really good support network in terms of family. I've, lucky enough to have my mum and dad around me and a loving, wider support network around me, which helped me grow up and feel motivated to progress through the ranks, as they say. And so I went to a relatively okay school in
Oh, come on.
Southampton.
It was a great school
So when it was
with
called
great
Belmore,
people.
I did pretty well at school. I hanged around with the cool kids still, but I always knew that I had the ability to do well. And so, yeah, past school really well. Went to Peter Simmons College, which was quite a prestige college at the time and probably still is today in Winchester. And then managed to go to university and take it from there. So I studied law at the University of Southampton, which was quite an interesting transition actually from studying a very traditional topic where most people will go into a legal career. I decided actually that I didn't want to go into the world of corporate law or a corporate role, and decided actually I wanted to get into something more around entrepreneurship and the startup world, because it just seems more flexible and more alike my personality. So I think it came from taking a real look at my experiences and my interests. And I decided that rather than move into another city to spend lots of money on university and student housing, etc., I wanted to actually take all the income that I got from the student loans, etc., to invest in new businesses. And so I just felt a passion for investing and the startup world from quite early. And that led me to decide actually, I've invested in lots of companies, and I actually invested in the company that I work with today, which is the reason why I currently work there, because I understood their business model and I understood and had a passion for what they wanted to do. And that really helped me, obviously, at the interview stage where I said I was a shareholder in their business anyway.
So like, were you happy with like the experience that you got from uni, like what you learned and like the degree you took and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd never, I don't regret doing law at the university. I think it's a really, really solid degree, and that's helped me in terms of the structure of the way that I think about things and the way that I do things. It's set me up to have a really structured approach to what I do.
You mentioned investing, right? What advice would you give to someone who was interested in investing?
Yeah, so obviously the investment markets are very varied. So I focused on investment in small startups and medium sized businesses. I would suggest initially looking at what your real interests are. You might be interested in longer term macroeconomics, and so the stock market might be more suitable for you investing on a long term basis. You might be very, very into your news on a daily basis and always are checking the news. So you might be interested more in short term investments. For me, I think the motivation was understanding how businesses work. And so I wanted to invest in a company where I'd be able to see the details of how they operate and what they do in order to help increase their revenue and help elevate them as a business. So I invested in a lot of companies through a website called Crowdcube. So they basically crowdfund, and luckily enough, two of these investments that I did make are now ranked in, like, I think the Financial Times 1000 for Europe's fastest growing companies, which is a really interesting space, which I get to see how they perform year on year.
Now, I just wanted to take it back a bit, like, because something very interesting you talked about and something that's relevant now is your experiences growing up in a background of low to middle income, because obviously the three of us, I assume, would have come from similar upbringings. Like, how did that change you? Did you think you had to work for something in a different manner to many others? How did that change you as a person? Like, how does that in fact affect you now?
So I think one of the key things that I learned growing up in a low income family was working hard and being self motivated. That was something that always got me, where my dad still does up to today, works extremely hard for a very honest living. And so his passion and his input into ensuring that he gave the best for my upbringing and my sister's upbringing was a real motivator for me to say, do you know what? It doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, or who you are, or what your name is, that you can succeed if you put your hard work into it.
Would you say something similar to those people? Let's envision someone who is coming from that same background, like, low to middle income and not with many opportunities. What would you tell them if they're thinking of one day dreaming of owning a business themselves?
I would suggest,
I know, great questions, right? You can say it if you want.
It's a very good question. I would
Thank
say
you.
that I'd say they need to have a passion and they need to have an outlet of a mentor to help lead them through the right direction. I've been really blessed with having some really good mentors and people that I can look up to that aren't necessarily people like, someone like Steve Jobs or someone at that huge level, but someone that you can relate to, someone that's from your background that has made it in something that you find really interesting. So I definitely suggest to find a mentor that can help advise you to move forward.
You say find a mentor. Where exactly could someone find a mentor? Like, if I say I decided, so let's say I'm someone who's looking, like, on the back of your advice is trying to get my life together, right? And I'm looking for a mentor. Where exactly do I go? Or how do I? What's like a practical advice you would give to someone who is trying to?
Great question,
Yeah,
Jace.
yeah, and
Thank you. I know.
that's one of the challenges, I think, for people that are in, the middle class or in the upper class. Their dad knows someone who works at X bank. It's very very easy for them to get connections because their mum or dad knows them. For people that are working class, they don't necessarily have those connections, and so it does take some hustle, it takes some grind. And I would suggest building up your profile on LinkedIn. I'd suggest asking friends of friends, and there's people that your friends will know or your friends' friends will know. And so it does take some dedication, it does take some hard work, but if you really want to get there, you will.
So you see, everyone talks about LinkedIn, like, but like, how do you effectively use it? Because everyone says get your LinkedIn, get enough connections, but how do you really make effective use of it?
I think it's all about building a personal brand. It's about expressing who you are in a way that is attractive to other people. And I think that just involves being genuine and showing what your interests are in the world and in current affairs, and just displaying that to the rest of the world, and not being afraid necessarily to show who you are.
So then, like, all those experiences you've gathered, like, through your times, like, how would you say you've translated those experiences into your, like, own business pursuits?
So I think it's all about people. The success of a business is down to the people that work within the business. And so it's all about taking care of people before you start thinking about profits. So I would suggest that people have the passion for a subject, find people around them that have the same passion and don't necessarily even have the experience, but have that passion to build the experience, and just take a crack at it.
And then, like, okay, so that was what you gathered before you started up the business. Like, what sort of the experience that you've gathered during this time of the COVID situation? What would you like? How would you use it moving forward?
I think in terms of general life, it's demonstrated that we take a lot of things for granted. We probably now much more appreciate great weather. We much more appreciate being outside and being able to exercise than we did beforehand. So one takeaway that I would make from COVID is that personal experience of saying, look, we need to appreciate every day as it comes by and just make the most of every day.
How do you think the COVID situation is going to affect your business looking forward, or going forward, I should say?
So I think it's going to be positive for us generally. There will be some challenges with events and networking, but we need to make sure that we're just staying on top of the situation and adapting and preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best.
Mike was muted. See, I muted it because I didn't want to cough whilst everyone's talking. But no, you made a very good point there, bro. Like, obviously everyone's gonna build a lot of experiences, especially for yourself as an entrepreneur, and so you've got your own businesses to focus on. But what about those people who've been furloughed? Like, what sort of advice would you give to them? Can you explain to us what sort of challenges you think that they would have faced and how they could make the most of it during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. So only until I think 1 week ago, I was working. I'm now currently on furlough. So it's actually been a great opportunity for me because I'm being paid not to work and I'm being paid to run my own business. And for a lot of people that have that side hustle, they are not earning enough to be able to quit their job, but they have a passion for something. And so the opportunity is there for the taking, and it depends on someone's mind frame. It depends on someone's mindset on how they want to approach the experience, because it's not something that is probably going to come along ever again unless we do end up having another pandemic.
Which is likely, to be fair.
Yeah. We think it will.
If you were to give advice to someone who wanted to start a business, what are kind of like the first things you would say to them?
So I would suggest you validate, validate. When I say validate, I mean testing the market and understanding what the challenges are from the perspective of who you want to address. So there's that common saying about a business is all about solving problems, and that's still definitely the case where you need to understand what the challenge is, but also whether your proposed solution will help resolve the challenge in a way that the person would like it to be.
Were you, Krishna, were you ever scared at one point of like what would, let's say, for example, take your mind back to when it all started with the lockdown situation and stuff. Were you ever worried about what was to come?
Yeah, and I think I still am worried about how the world might be tomorrow. It's an uncertainty that I think people as human beings just find very difficult. We're all very used to doing the same routine every day, and that gives us a sense of comfort. This whole situation has put us in a position that we probably personally haven't experienced before. So it is worrying on a day to day basis where you sometimes just sit and think what's going to happen next, and yeah, what's happening in the next 2 months, what's happening in the next 6 months.
Do you know what? It's actually a really good thing that we've had you on here for this episode, because we actually had a request from one of our faithful listeners called it's soyen.ph, who asked, how do millennials become successful in life? Now, like, this is a relevant question to ask, because this person says that millennials tend to change their life decisions in a snap when they see someone else successful from a different field. Like, so yeah, people just don't jump from one thing to another nowadays.
It's a very big question, and I think given the entrepreneurship that I have, my personality tends to be a specialist in everything. At least that's what I aim for, is trying to gain knowledge in every single aspect of business, so that if there is a particular interest that I have and want to keep pushing at, I'm able to pick up at a higher level. So it does seem the case that there are certain industries where you do specialize in something very specific, but in the business world, you should demonstrate a very holistic approach to life and to business.
What do you reckon, Jace? Do you think that's a legit statement, like millennials jumping from one thing to another? And if it is true, do you think it's like a good or bad thing?
No, I definitely agree. I think I definitely read an article a while ago where they were saying that these days, like for example, like maybe some of our parents or grandparents and the older generation in general would like they would work at an office for like 50 years, or they would work in the coal mines for like 30 years. Do you know what I mean? Like they basically spend their whole lives working in one company or working for one person. Whereas I think what they found now is the trend in our generation is that we tend to change jobs maybe every 2 or 3 years. And a lot of people do not they don't like the idea, because there was two opposing views on it. One where they were like, at least it gives people the opportunity to try different things and basically live a more fulfilled life because they're just doing anything. Whereas it also says that some people don't have that structure where you don't necessarily know where you're going to be in 3 years' time, because you're probably going to leave soon. And so companies can't necessarily make long-term investments in you where they can maybe train you to be a project manager or train you to be the head of this or the head of that, because you might leave. But I think if a company is good to its people, people will stay. So it's not like the last company that I worked for, I think the longest serving person there was like 11 years. Whereas in most companies, like before that, it probably would have been. To be fair, it was a fairly new company, so he'd been there since the company had started. But people had come and went in the last 11 years or the last however many years the company was there for, and even that seemed like quite a lot of years. Because when you said, "Oh, I've been here for 11 years" or whatever, we're like, "Whoa!" But in a lot of other companies, 11 years is not actually that long. But because of how we see things, we kind of like we're quick to jump to try other things or do other things. And I guess there's good and bad. There's pros and cons of it, basically, whichever way you want to look at it.
Like, basically, I think these days people have a lot more of a freedom to find their passion. They can go from one thing to another. And also because of things like maybe like LinkedIn, website, advertisements of jobs, even the like job centers now and so on, it's a lot more easier and accessible to find different jobs, or even thanks to the internet to find the job that you want. Didn't I just smash it with that? Like, wasn't that isn't that true? It is true, isn't it?
I think a great thing as well is that, say for example, someone is miserable at a company, but they're scared that they won't find other jobs because or whatever. At least companies now have to treat the employees better because there's always going to be another company who can take your employee. So maybe it could work for a better working culture, and people hopefully would be happier because there's always going to be another option somewhere if it doesn't work out with this company.
Yeah, definitely. I think employers are now emphasizing more about a work life balance and promoting a culture of well being, which has become a lot more important today and a lot more expressed by people and the public and employers themselves around making sure that people are happy working, not only that they're just working.
'Cause I think a happier employee is an effective employee. I think I just made that up, so quote me on this. Jason Amati 2020. No, but yeah, and so you said that your team is there's four of you. Do you think you'll be so if you were to expand, like you said, on a national level in the future, what do you think is one thing you would specifically work on to promote the mental health and the well-being of your employees?
So I think it's about building a culture of well-being, which means making sure that we're thinking and asking about the well-being of our employees and finding out how they feel not only within the workplace but at home as well, because what you bring to work is the result of what you're bringing from home. And so it's really important to have a think about what you can do to potentially help someone if they are having challenges at home or if there are challenges at work to help them feel better and help resolve the issue.
A lot of companies talk about, oh, we need to create a culture, we need to create a culture, but then they never actually specifically have a plan of creating a like that kind of culture where because you can't just say to people, oh, feel free to talk about anything. You have to start at the top where you show that it's acceptable to, for example, I know there are some companies who do, what is it, like personal days? So if you feel like you can't come in today because maybe you're anxious about something or you're like, do you know, like when you're having, where you can basically take a day off and maybe just stay at home. And I guess that makes that, if that kind of culture or if that is more implicate what's that I'm looking for? It's kind of applied to more jobs and more companies where they allow their employees to feel free to basically say, you know what, today I can't come into work today. You kind of create, so you basically will create that happy culture at work where if people don't feel like they're not in that kind of like happy mood or whatever, they can even, so that this brings it back to working from home. Maybe someone they don't want to be in the office and or whatever because they don't want to be around people. Give them the opportunity to work from home, and that flexibility makes that makes that employee better. And like I've already said, a happy employee is an effective employee. So bringing it all back to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's down to making sure that the people at the top are employing the right types of people that will naturally just embody the culture that you're trying to promote because a company is made up of its people. And so if you've got people that want to have a happy workplace and you've got an employer who's supportive of that workplace, together you can help build that whole ethos around being a company that promotes well-being.
Do you think our generation will basically change how working life is forever?
Yeah, definitely. I would say so. I think we've seen trends already, even pre COVID, where there's a need for emphasizing the well being of people, making sure people are getting out and getting their exercise, and enabling people to work from home where they can. I think that has been a result of the demands of the people themselves, where people might want to start a family younger, or people have other commitments in their day to day life which they feel shouldn't be changed or altered just because they have a job too.
Definitely. I think especially when you bring in, like when you talk about like women. So if a woman wants to have a child and that flexibility to be able to work from home, because childcare first is expensive, it can be difficult to find. And I think when we're a lot more flexible and we allow people to basically run their life how they want it to be, now we have a whole load of different diversity, and so you can't just have that back in the 1950s where even 95 maybe that may need to change, and that may need to be a lot more flexible where people work maybe what hours they want to work, because just like the way people work is different now. Is we can't force everyone to work the same way, and I think that's something we've realized in the last few years. And even before COVID happened, I think some companies, like you said, would have started making changes and applying just different ways of their working life.
Now, the main things, if I was to summarize all of that, like literally the main point that everyone's talking about is well-being, like out of this. So like Christian, like what sort of challenges come with entrepreneurship, like mainly focused around well-being, that you think that any entrepreneur will come across?
Yeah, so it's definitely a hard thing to do, building your own business. There's a lot of challenges that will come with well-being, where you'll feel stressed, you'll need to work long hours, you'll spend money and you won't see that money coming back, and you do feel that coming up against you, and often you can feel like the world is completely against you and you're going to fail. And the fact is that most companies that start up will fail, but as an entrepreneur, you almost have to be of a nature where you are willing to take that risk. And so I think the most important thing is understanding your own limits, and everyone has different limits to the number of hours that they want to work or the amount of money or debt that they want to get into. They need to understand and have a support network around them that understands what their limits are and at what point something might become unhealthy to a point that it shouldn't necessarily carry on.
Sweet. So as we start to wrap up, then, like, based on what we've discussed, what are your recommendations as an entrepreneur and for those wanting to get into entrepreneurship during the times of working during COVID?
So I'd say look at the opportunities that we have today and think about what implications there might be on tomorrow, and use that as a basis for planning out your business, not only in terms of your whole business model or creating a business plan, but also practically how are you able to balance that with any other commitments you might have, and plan and understand what risks are involved and how willing you are to pursue that particular industry or business venture. And then once you're ready, go for it.
Sweet. That is actually genuinely some awesome advice. Like, would you also recommend anything outside of like entrepreneurship, work, anything, like just anything that you'd want to share for people that they'd find useful during this time?
So I am and have been a big fan of reading for a long time. And I've actually only recently started to read more entrepreneurship books around your personality and how you should approach business. So I would suggest a whole load of different types of books. One that comes
Any
into
in particular?
mind. Yeah, so Start With Why by Simon Sinek is a really well-known book around understanding as an entrepreneur, as an employee or an employer, about how you should approach a business. And it's not about making money. It's about giving your reasons behind why you've decided to build a business in the first place and showing that passion through in all of your marketing content and the way you do business.
Sweet. Reading is the one. I wish I could read.
It's a quite light-hearted question, which I don't know if you listened to any of our podcasts before, but we always give a recommendation of maybe think where reading, watching, listening, anything. Just like another suggestion or something that you'd recommend, because we want our listeners to be empowered, but also we want them to have fun as well. So
Christian's like, what the hell does that mean?
I haven't had fun in a while, you know. I mean, I would say watch a bit of rubbish Netflix.
Any in particular?
what are you watching at the moment?
Do I have to tell you that?
Yes, you do.
Right, so I'm watching White Lines at the moment and I'm loving it.
What's
Really?
that? What's that?
I started watching it and I'm not loving it.
What is it? White lines? White lions?
No, white lines, as in like white lines, as in cocaine.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a bit of
okay.
it's escapism for me. It's far from what I'm
Cocaine is an
obviously used
escapism for you. Fair enough.
to. The distant observations of cocaine use and the party culture and murder and gore is.
Wait, is this a TV, like a drama?
Yeah, it's a TV show. Yeah, on Netflix.
Yeah.
It came out like a week ago or something.
Who's
To be
in
fair, I've
that?
only seen one episode, so maybe I haven't got into it yet to be able to.
Give it a
It's got
couple
that.
more episodes.
Yeah, the main character is quite famous, but I don't remember her name. I don't know her name.
Do you know Krishna? What does she look like?
Very pretty.
Oh, that definitely narrows it down.
Very pretty. I don't remember her name, but I remember her face.
Laura Haddock.
Laura Haddock.
Yeah, you don't know Laura Haddock? She was in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What is she?
Don't know what
Playing
that-
who? You don't know Guardians of the Galaxy? Come on, bro.
and she was in
Transformers.
Transformers last night, and she
Oh
was in the
yeah,
In-Betweeners movie.
of course. Now it rings a bell. Oh yeah, she was in In-Betweeners movie. That's right.
Yeah. No, but yeah, no, it's fair enough. That's it. Maybe I need to watch a few more episodes before I'll get into it. Maybe.
Oh, socials. Krishna, what are the socials that you'd like to share?
See, look, this is just demonstrative of how boring I am again.
Just
But-
share your LinkedIn. Just share your LinkedIn.
I cannot lie, it's just a LinkedIn. So
Go for it.
just search for Krishna Bola, which is Krishna, and the surname is Bholah.
Let me help you out with another plug. Remind the listeners of your website.
Yep. So search Google Gains on a Go or go direct by www.gainsonago.co.uk. And you can find us on Instagram as well at Gains on a Go,
And why would they want to do that?
because they've just listened to this podcast, so they need to see the proof in the pudding.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jace?
Well, as always, people follow us on the Canvas of Life on Instagram at canvas.of.life_, Twitter Canvas of Life 1, Facebook Canvas of Life, and on our website canvas-of-life.com.
Jeez, Jace, you're getting so good at this. Mate, bro.
And take care.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Till next time.